What's her name?
Her name is Maggie Murdaugh. Margaret Brandstetter Murdaugh. How you doing?
What's her birthday?
9/15/68.
Okay, and what's your son's first name? You said Paul?
Paul Terry Murdaugh.
And what's his birthday?
Jay, do you have anybody
4.
coming through town that could stop and pick up that tent? I see lighting off in the distance.
What, are they covering them up?
I got some getting dressed now, Sheriff. I'll have somebody stop and grab it.
Tell them they don't have to do that. They don't need to. Preserve what we can.
That was Alex Murdaugh on June 7, 2021, speaking to officers at the scene where his wife Maggie and his son Paul had been shot and killed. Now, that body camera footage was heavily redacted before the court allowed it to be released to the public. But during the trial, the jurors saw the actual footage of the gruesome scene where Paul and Maggie died. Now, that jury would also find Alex Murdaugh guilty of the murders of his wife and son. Well, now, prosecutors want to make sure that the unredacted body camera footage and photos of the autopsies are never publicly released. The motion to seal those exhibits currently reads, throughout the trial, the parties and the court endeavored to seal crime scene and autopsy photos depicting the victims in the interest of their privacy and dignity. Inasmuch as that exhibit or any exhibit depicting the victims at the crime scene or an autopsy were inadvertently not marked as sealed in the clerk's records, those records are hereby sealed. Now, there was a hearing over this motion in South Carolina today, and still with us, criminal defense attorney Darryl Cohen, the attorney who represented Johnny Depp, Ben Chew, and Deputy Public Defender for LA County, Philip Dubé. And gentlemen, I will mention, the reason for this hearing and the reason why the state brought this motion is because the unredacted version of the video had gotten out, allegedly to Netflix. And so there was an issue there. So I want to start right there with you, Philip, and this idea that, you know, we see in these cases leaks all the time. Do you get any sense of how these leaks happen such that a judge has to go this far to make sure that this stuff's not getting out, stuff that shouldn't be out in the first place?
Well, anytime you get this type of incendiary evidence in the hands of law enforcement, there's such huge organizations, you're always going to get a loose cannon for some peace officer who wants to go out there and share it under the guise of, you know, don't tell anybody, don't share this with anybody else. And before you know it, it's all over the place. We saw this out here in California with the tragic death of Kobe Bryant. Remember what happened when they arrived at the scene of the aviation crash. Photos were taken, not just by the coroner and by the sheriffs and law enforcement, but some of the peace officers on scene took photos with their own phone. And of course, they shared them, and it was very distressing to the Bryant family. And of course, it resulted in litigation, and a jury awarded her millions of dollars. So not only is there civil liability, but there truly is a lot of mental anguish involved here. There is a surviving sibling here, remember, and that's, what's the kid's name? Not Paul's brother. I've already forgotten his name. The last thing he needs is
Murdaugh, you're talking?
Buster Murdaugh. The last thing Buster needs is for these gory photos of his mother and his brother to be plastered all over the internet, not Netflix. It's just ignominious, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, agree. And Ben Chew, few people would know, as well as you, the media frenzy that was around this particular case and around any high-profile case of which you are definitely involved in. And then you get this proliferation. You get the big organizations, but then you get these smaller outlets now, these folks on YouTube who want to do the work of journalists and are doing great work in some cases. So talk to me about the pressure that can be felt by attorneys and folks working in the criminal justice system with the, you know, the proliferation of media and new media as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Michael. The pressure from the public is significant, and you try to ignore it, but it's there, it's palpable. I agree 100% with Philip. There's no reason for this material to be out there, and it should be suppressed.
Darryl Cohen, the order prohibits anyone from disseminating this information on going forward, and anyone who has it, meaning quote unquote Netflix, from using it in any way. we talked a little about how they get it, but at this point, how do you enforce a ruling like this by the judge? Is it merely civilly, or are there possible criminal sanctions here?
It's fairly easy to enforce. If Netflix wants to publish it, Netflix is going to pay for it, and they'll pay handsomely, and it will cost them millions of dollars. And the judge could find him in criminal contempt and could incarcerate the producer or the president or anyone else, the CEO, if the judge so wanted to. And by the way, let me throw in one more thing. There are also members of the court that for pictures of dead American presidents will leak something, or because they need a favor and they want to capitalize on it now. So it's not just law enforcement. It's the judicial system as well that has from time to time leaked it. And it's a horrible thing. This is something that no one should ever have to see, and certainly should not be thrust upon them.
Philip, it keeps happening time and time again. There are various sanctions involved. So my question to you is there anything that we can do to stop this in any way? Should there be worse penalties? How should we approach this problem? Because it is about the dignity, and it is about respect for the victims' families, those who are surviving those involved in cases like this.
Well, I think any type of crime scene photo should be presumed sealed under the law. And that means you need to go into court and petition a judge to have it unsealed so you can use it. And the judge will engage in a balancing test to see, well, is the public interest greater than the privacy interest? And then the court makes the determination at that time. And if you do that, it leaves it sort of quasi-criminal, meaning if you do this, if you leak these photos or these images without a court order unsealing it, you do so at your own peril, meaning because it's quasi-criminal and you violate this presumption, it could result in a criminal contempt, and you can do some pretty serious time. And in some jurisdictions, if you do it more than once, it can be a felony and you can end up in state prison for it. So yeah, that's how you would deal with it. You'd have to rewrite the law.